Sup, guys? I just got three letters right now. BYU, baby. They better not blow this now. It's still the third quarter. They just returned a punt for like 90 yards for a touchdown. They're up 31-6 right now. Let's finish this off. Get me a winning day, baby. Otherwise, it'll be 2-2 and a loss, but it looks like it's going to be 3-1 plus a money line cash here. So make it happen. The Red Sox game got postponed because it was terrible weather. I should have realized that because I'm in Boston. I should have mentioned that this morning and been like, oh, yeah, by the way, it is raining terribly out right now, so there's a chance this game doesn't happen. I don't care. I don't mind that. I mean, whatever. I threw the money out on it. It pushed. My other baseball play got there. The under Pittsburgh, Cincinnati didn't look good. Jared Jones didn't do very well, but it finished 7-1, and it still stayed under that 9. Got that. The Ohio play sucked. That was my one loss. And then it was the one that looked the worst in the market, too. And then I won on, what was the other play that I had? Buffalo. They won outright against Northern Illinois. We're here to talk NFL, though, baby. Yeah, I sprinkled on the money lines. You didn't? I recommend doing it. I put, I usually put 1 or 3% of the bet on the money line if it's like a huge money line underdog, which is what I did with Buffalo. With Buffalo, I had, I think I had 3% of it on the money line with Buffalo as a 13.5 point underdog or whatever. So I did that. And then on this BYU one, I have 10% of the bet on the money line because they're a 7 point underdog. So when it's a close underdog like that and you're playing on that underdog, yeah, throw some on the money line for sure. We're going to be doing that in the NFL. That's why we're here, right? We're about to talk NFL. You're going to hate me for these NFL plays. Hell yeah, Nate. 14-4. That is a huge volume of bets, man. Huge volume. I get way more selective, but hopefully some of those were my leans. Hopefully, I don't even know how my leans did, to be honest. I talked about so many games. I only really pay attention to what happens in actual bets that I wind up making. Hopefully, my leans were okay. NFL, I mean, I'm going to know where all my leans land on the NFL. My NFL Week 2 video, I think I wound up going, like 7-1 across all the leans and the bets that I gave out on that one. I think the only one I got wrong was, I don't even remember what the hell it was, but it was a good week. NFL, I swept my bets 3-0. It's not going to happen again this week, but we could try. We could try to make it happen. You guys are going to be real mad at me for these bets. Everybody's going to hate me, man. These are, like, if you want to take the ugliest teams you could possibly imagine taking, that's what we're doing this week on this NFL card, man. I can mention a couple other games as we go through this card, like some of the games that I have more of an opinion on, I guess, kind of. What cricket farm? What are we talking about? What's up, Johnny? I'm talking to Nate right now, and I'm talking to you, I guess. We got three viewers in here, and you're 2 of them. I don't know. The other one has not shown themselves, has not revealed themselves in the chat. Let's get to these bets, man. I don't want this video to be an hour and a half like the college one was. It won't be because the NFL slate is smaller, but let's do it. I'll talk about Texans-Vikings because I find this one to be interesting. When I looked at the scheduling spot, I leaned to the Texans, but the market looks like it's against it. This is not going to be one of my plays. Texans are down from 3.5 to 1, so as a road favorite, they have crashed down in the market, and I think it's just because the Vikings have looked really good, unexpectedly good in the first couple of weeks. You got to kind of look at the look-ahead lines. So I do have the look-ahead lines screenshotted somewhere. I'm not screen sharing it right now because it's not a website like I had before, but looking at the look-aheads from the week beforehand, which for the upcoming week, by the way, I have them on a website right now because I missed screenshotting them before the Thursday night game, which does have a little bit of impact on a couple of games, whichever games those two teams are going to be involved in. So the Texans line on the look ahead here was, what am I looking at here? Let me see here. I don't even see it. What the hell? Well, that's great because I was just going to talk about it. I don't even see what the line was. I thought I had it screenshotted. Well, never mind. I assume that the look ahead was closer to what this 3.5 was, but now we've seen the Texans plummet down to the 1 point favorite here. 53% of the tickets on them, 57% of the cash on the other side on the Vikings. So the market indicators look pretty strong on the Vikings here. What's up, guys? What's up, Al? The Chargers, I can talk about that game in a minute if you want me to. Chargers Steelers, it's a tough handicap in that game, to be honest. Nicholas, what's up, man? Yeah, thank you. Fuck you too, buddy. Sports are gay, obviously. Merida, I don't know what that means. But let me, so Texans, I think they're in the better spot here scheduling wise, to be honest, because we know the Vikings are coming off a giant win, man, over the 49ers at home. And by the way, I saw this stat, and I didn't realize that. I knew the Vikings beat San Francisco on that Monday night game or whatever it was. I think it was a Monday night game, maybe a Sunday night game in Minnesota last year. So I knew that was a fact. But San Francisco has not won at Minnesota since the 1990s, I believe is a stat that I heard. I don't know why. I don't know how that's possible, but apparently that is the case. San Francisco just can't win at Minnesota. Minnesota's coming off that big win, man. And Sam Darnold is now like the talk of the town. He looks incredible. Everybody's talking about how awesome he is and how he only sucked because he was in Carolina and whatever. I think you got to slow your roll a little bit, man. He's still Sam Darnold. He was not even going to be the starter on this Vikings team until J.J. McCarthy got hurt. He was on some other teams throughout his NFL career, and he's never been that good. He's been in the NFL for a while now, right? So I think maybe he's found his home at Minnesota. Maybe he'll be a pretty good quarterback, but I don't think he's a great quarterback, which people are hailing him as right now. And now he's up against a Texans defense that is actually a pretty decent defense, although San Francisco's is also pretty decent. So, yeah, I mean, he has been doing well. He faced one good defense. San Francisco is in a really bad situational spot, though. As I mentioned last week, I leaned to the Vikings, and that was one that almost made my card. A lot of professional bettors had the Vikings last week. Vikings beating the Giants, I don't care about that whatsoever. You can't think that Darnold is great just because he beats the Giants. But now just because he beats the 49ers, holy crap, everybody, loves the Vikings now. I guess although the public is still on the Houston Texans here, I don't know. Houston's coming off a close win, but I consider that to be kind of a close call over the Chicago Bears on that Sunday night game. Houston was a 6.5 point favorite or whatever, so they probably should have won the game more easily against a Bears team that has had a miserable offense, by the way, under Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams has been terrible so far this year, dude. Like, Chicago is averaging like 3.3 yards per play on offense or something like that. It's like a historically bad average play yardage-wise that the Bears are putting up so far. It's unbelievably bad. They're like far and away the worst team in the NFL when it comes to that. It's just that their defense is doing particularly well. So Houston, I think they might consider that to be a close call, and they will actually refocus themselves coming into this Vikings game. The odds makers are still telling you the Texans are the better team, and if you like them, I mean, you're getting better odds on it. It's just I don't trust playing the Texans, even though my situational handicap would say that the Texans would be the side. The market just looks against it, man, and it's kind of confusing me because the Vikings also have a big game up next. They have their biggest rival in all of the NFL up next. They play Green Bay next week. So that's a huge game for the Vikings too. And now they're playing this out-of-conference game. Although it's an out-of-conference game for both teams. And the out-of-conference road games actually tend to be the least big game on a team's schedule. But the Texans, I think they should be focused coming off that close call against the Bears, man. Even though they have a little bit of a shorter week because it was the night game. Vikings, that was a pretty monumental win, really, against the 49ers. Anytime you do it is, even though they did it last year, too. I don't trust Sam Darnold yet. I'm not at the point where I'm about to trust him. C.J. Stroud is more trustworthy. I mean, we at least got a full, really good season out of him last year, even though he is only just in his sophomore year, and the league might be figuring him out a little bit. A little bit of a tough handicap there. Chargers, Steelers, you want me to talk about? I can talk about this, I guess. I mean, we see the Steelers are down from 2.5 to 1. So it does look like there is market movement going against the Steelers here. But the Chargers are public. 69% of the tickets and 74% of the cash on the Chargers. Kind of interesting to try to read what the market is doing here because it looks like on the one hand, the line is moving in the direction of the Chargers, so there probably has been some money pushing it in that direction. But Chargers also public, even though they have a little bit more of the cash on them. They're public enough that I don't really know that I don't think I would want to be on the Chargers side here. The Chargers, they're coming off a really easy blowout win, basically, over the hapless Carolina Panthers. Nobody's going to really take anything away from that, but I believe Justin Herbert got hurt in that game, so it seems like he is still going to play in this game, but he is a little bit hobbled, so I don't know how that's going to affect the Chargers' offense here. That remains to be seen. So we will see. I mean, they do have the better offense in general, of course, over the Steelers, who do not have a very formidable offense. Steelers' defense has looked really good so far this season, but they played Atlanta in their first game with Kirk Cousins, where their offense was still figuring stuff out, and they played Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos last week. So I don't know if we can really say, hey, the Steelers are amazing defensively. I think they are still pretty good defensively. They may still be the better of these two teams defensively, because I don't think the Chargers' defense is really that good. They were horrific last year, but now with the coaching change, they probably can't possibly be as bad as that with Harbaugh in there now, but it remains to be seen. So it's a tough read for me, man. It is really difficult. Both of these teams are kind of coming off somewhat easy wins over not very good teams, so there isn't much of like a letdown spot to look at or anything like that. Difficult read in general on that Chargers-Steelers game. Eagles-Saints, I lean to the Eagles in this one, but the market, again, looks like it's kind of indicating in the other direction, with the Saints flipping from a 2.5-point dog to a 2.5-point favorite. This has to be like an overreaction to what's happened recently, man. Like, I think that the Texans, like I was saying when I was trying to look at what the look-aheads were, which I don't have them up right now, I would imagine the Texans had to have been at least a 3.5-point favorite coming into that game. And this is kind of recency bias shoving that line towards the Vikings based on the Vikings performing better than expected. The same thing has to be the case with the Saints, dude. The Saints have won 2 games in complete blowouts. The first game, nobody really batted an eye because it was against the Carolina Panthers yet again. By the way, Carolina Panthers and Denver Broncos, 2 teams that I'm saying are absolutely horrific, and I might be playing on both of them this week, so that's how ugly this is going to get this week. But this is, again, you don't want to overreact to what you've seen so far, man, especially in the NFL. You want to temper your human tendency to overreact to what you just saw, and even though it's going to mean like forcing yourself to make tough plays, like plays that you really think that you really should not be making. It's like really difficult to make these plays. You got to do it, man, because the NFL market is going to overreact and adjust to what those results are. And those results might not really be sustainable. And I think that might be the case with the Saints here. They are a 2.5-point favorite, headed towards 3. 61% of the tickets on them, so they are a bit public. 69% of the cash, so they have more of the cash on them than the tickets. I don't know if it's going to remain that way or not, especially if it hits 3. I think you're going to see some take back on the Eagles side, dude. I mean, the Eagles, yes, they are on a shorter week because they played on Monday night, but they looked like ass on Monday night, dude. They lost outright. They lost at home to the Atlanta Falcons, so I think that's going to refocus the Eagles coming into this game, whereas the Saints, on the other hand, the Saints just annihilated the Dallas Cowboys, and I'm pretty sure that was on the road as well. The Saints look way too good, dude. They put up over 40 points in both of the first 2 games. They have not punted yet this season. I believe they've scored on every single offensive drive. I don't even think they've turned the ball over yet either. That is completely insane. They've done it against 2 defenses that I don't think are very good in Carolina and Dallas. Dallas, I mean, even though they're a perennial playoff team, they always are choke artists, and I don't think that they're necessarily that good. The Saints are overperforming right now. This is still Derek Carr, man. I mean, is he really as good as he's looked the first 2 weeks versus, like, we've seen basically an entire career out of this guy, and he's been on the Saints for a couple of years now, and he has not been doing this. So, again, I think you got to temper your expectations. The Eagles, I think, have to be in bounce-back mode, coming off a much more embarrassing performance. Saints are probably just feeling way, way, way too high on themselves, and I think this line has to have overreacted to those Saints results a little bit. So I lean to the Eagles in that game. What's up, guys? The bookies hate Dallas. Well, no, the bookies love Dallas because too many people bet on them, right? Because the Dallas is always a public team. The bookies loved that result last week of Dallas getting their asses handed to them. The public was on Dallas in that game, and Dallas got crushed. So, I mean, like, I think the bookies probably made money on that, even though I think there were professional bettors coming in on the New Orleans side in that one. And I took New Orleans in my pools, didn't bet on it, but I think the public, in the NFL, the public usually outweighs the professional betting, and I think it did in that game. But Dallas is always overvalued, basically, in the market because they're such a big name team, but that doesn't mean the bookies hate them. The bookies are just going to throw up a higher line on Dallas than really what they should be getting, basically. And really, the public is still going to be taking Dallas for the most part, but the professional bettors are better at like identifying those spots and taking that other team. We got Packers-Titans. This game is a very interesting one where you have 51% of the tickets on the Titans, so not very much of the public on the Titans. So I'm actually shocked that the majority of tickets is even on Tennessee at all, because Green Bay, of course, they were a playoff team last year. The Titans have just looked like total garbage so far. Will Levis is probably the most turnover-heavy quarterback in the league so far this year. I think he's got to be. He's turned the ball over like probably at least 6 times in 2 games. The public, I don't know how this ticket percentage is even accurate. No recreational bettor is going to be taking the Titans. Even if it is a Green Bay Packer team without Jordan Love, I still don't see how that could be the case. 64% of the cash, however, is on the Titans, and it has driven this line up from 1.5 to 3. But I don't know how much of that movement is like actual cash coming in on the Titans, like from professional bettors, or how much of it is the Jordan Love injury situation, where I think that 1.5 could have been like an opener where the books just kind of threw up a number that's like kind of just in between. Because like if Jordan Love was playing, the Packers would be the favorite in this game, probably by a few points, I would imagine. But I think if he's not playing, then Titans around -2.5 maybe probably would be about what you would see. Maybe 3, I guess, even, which is what it is right now. So I think the books threw this number out because of the uncertainty. They just threw that number up, just split the difference right in the middle and see what happens. So I think we still don't even know if Jordan Love is actually going to play. This move in the market seems to indicate that he's probably not going to play. I mean, he has a pretty bad injury, which it was originally listed he was going to be out for 3 to 5 weeks, so I don't really see him missing only 1 game. But it seems like he is practicing, and I guess it is possible that he's going to come back. If he does come back, I don't even know if he's going to be at 100%. It seems like they're rushing him back too early if he does come back. But I kind of lean to the Titans in this game regardless. I wouldn't want to lay a 3-point number on the Titans. I do think the Titans are actually going to win this game if you had to make me guess, even though it is going to be, if Jordan Love's not going to play, that makes it even more interesting, kind of, because it's going to be Malik Willis under center for the Packers, and he'll be playing against his former team that he was playing on like right up until very recently, until like right before the season started. I think he was on the Tennessee Titans, right? So he's going to be playing up against his former team, I believe. I got that wrong last week where I thought he was on Houston. I knew he was on one of those teams in that division. I think he was on the Titans, and now he might be playing against the Titans, but that does probably mean the Titans know how to slow him down because they know his tendencies because he's been on their team. So that might actually be more of an advantage to the Titans defense. So I would still lean to the Titans in that case. But if Jordan Love comes back, you're going to be in a reverse injured player theory situation. So I talk about the injured player theory. I mentioned it last week. I mentioned that I liked Green Bay to cover against Indy last week because, well, the Green Bay was getting way too many points at home, man. They were getting 3.5 at home against the Colts just because of the Jordan Love injury. The line moved like 7 points probably just off of the Jordan Love injury, which I think it is again here really to accommodate for his injury. So that first game that the star player is out when they're injured, you tend to see the team step up in their absence, and that is what Green Bay did last week. So you tend to actually get value on that team with the injured quarterback because the line over-adjusts to accommodate for that injury, which I think it did in that game. And the team plays like really hard that first game without that guy. So it's good to play on that team that first game. But then if he's still out in that next game, because they played they put in such a big effort in that first game without that star player, and it was a big game, usually a big win, they tend to then kind of regress a little bit in that next game if that guy remains out. So that would have me leaning to the Titans side a bit in this one. But if Jordan Love does come back, then you have the reverse injured player theory situation where the inverse of that happens, and you would see the line go back towards the Packers. So if Jordan Love is announced that he is playing, you're going to see the Packers wind up probably being a favorite in this game. And then that's probably an over-adjustment the other way, because he's going to have to get back into his rhythm, and that doesn't just happen automatically after he's missed some time, really. And it's also a situation where the Packers are probably going to be thinking, we just won easily without this guy, so we can, like, you almost get a little bit, like, complacent when he comes back, thinking, like, of course we're going to win again with him back if we just won without him. So either way, I actually think the Titans would kind of be the lean on the side in that one. And then you also have, speaking of the injured player theory, you, I guess, have it happening in Dolphins-Seahawks. So that kind of has me leaning to the Dolphins in this game, because Tua got hurt in the Thursday game right near the end of the game against Buffalo. Tua, I'm pretty sure he's going to be out in this game. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we'd see the Seahawks as a 4.5-point favorite otherwise. I think the Dolphins, if they had Tua, I think they would be listed as the better team, so you would see probably something closer to a pick'em, I would guess, something like that. I don't know exactly, but with Tua out and the Dolphins having extra time off, and the Dolphins they got crushed on the scoreboard in that game, and having extra time off after a bad performance like that, plus getting the extra value of having the injured player theory situation coming in, Dolphins probably are likely to step it up in this game and use that extra time to prepare something and focus and refocus, whatever the case may be. So I think all of those are actually kind of advantageous for the Dolphins. So I would prefer to take the points with the Dolphins in this one. I'm not actually going to do it, just like I'm not playing on the Titans, just because there's a bit of uncertainty there, and the market looks kind of weird to me on this one with the Seahawks public. 62% of the tickets on them, probably because of the Tua injury, and people didn't like what they saw out of Skylar Thompson when he came in that game. 69% of the cash on the Seahawks, so more of the cash than the tickets. I don't know about that, really, but Skylar Thompson, if you remember, I don't know if he's actually as bad as he may have looked in that Buffalo game, because he actually played decently against Buffalo. If you remember, Tua was hurt not last year, but I think the season before that, Miami was in the playoffs. They were a big underdog at Buffalo. Tua was hurt for that game. He was out. Skylar Thompson was the Dolphins quarterback in that game, and he almost led the Dolphins to a victory as a huge underdog at Buffalo, if you remember that. So that guy does have the ability to play in, like, these big games and not play as poorly as what we saw in that Thursday night game. Also, I believe that Thursday night game was kind of misleading on the scoreboard. I think Miami actually outgained Buffalo pretty significantly in that game, even though Buffalo has dominated that series against Miami recently. The scoreboard made it look like Buffalo dominated the game, but I don't think that was actually the case. I think Miami suffered from like a -3 turnover margin in the game, and they actually outgained Buffalo. So I don't think Miami is actually as bad as they looked in that game either, even with Skylar Thompson under center. I don't think they're as bad. Seahawks, on the other hand, have had to travel cross-country twice because they opened the season at home in Seattle against Denver. Then they had to go all the way to Foxborough, and they won at New England, and that game went into overtime as well. So the Seahawks had to play an overtime game on the East Coast, and now they have to go all the way back to the Pacific Coast again to play this game. So zigzagging cross-country like that, and going from east to west is actually worse than going from west to east, because when you're on the East Coast, you adjust your biological clock to that. Although, yeah, the Seahawks they probably returned almost right away, so they've probably been able to readjust their biological clocks for most of the week, so I don't think it'll be that much of a disadvantage for the Seahawks. You see it be more of a disadvantage when you have a team that plays most of their games on the East Coast, and then they have to go out to the West Coast, and it's rare for them, basically because they're playing way later. Like, as far as their biological clock is concerned, they're basically having to play the game. If it's like a night game especially, they're having to play it basically until like midnight East Coast time, pretty much. So that tends to be the worst spot, is when you have an East Coast team having to go out to the West Coast and play a night game. But still, this is a 4 o'clock slate East Coast game, so it's not the easiest travel spot for the Seahawks. So I lean to the Dolphins in that one. What's up, Johnny? What? Whoa, Dave hit you with the slump continues. What was that? You mean Raven? I don't know what you're talking about, man. Yeah, you want me to kick his ass at Bohemian Grove? He could destroy me, dude. Tua's on IR. That sucks, dude. Yeah, I mean, I figured he was going to be out for this game, but he's, yeah, I mean, I guess he's going to be out for a longer period of time than that. Very unfortunate for football fans, although I'm not necessarily a huge fan of Tua or Miami. I mean, he's all right, I guess. But Nicholas, have a good night, buddy. We'll get to my bets in a second. Of course, this is going to go like an hour just because I'm shooting the shit with you guys. Oh, my God. And I have not gotten to any of my plays yet, but I'm going to run down these night games. And then I don't know if there are any other games that I was really going to comment on here. I mean, I guess maybe I'll comment on, well, Lions-Cardinals, I guess, is kind of interesting because it looks like the market is heavily leaning to the Cardinals here, and it's like Lions down from 4.5 to 2.5 as the road favorite. 53% of tickets on them. It's 72% of the cash on the Cardinals. I had the Cardinals last week, but man, this is a situation where the Cardinals, that was a really bad spot for the Rams. I liked the Cardinals a lot in that game. It was a nice win for me on that one. The Cardinals are now, though, in a situation where they got that monkey off their back, basically. The Rams had really had their number over the last few years, and the Cardinals slaughtered the Rams. I mean, that's a huge win for the Cardinals. So even though, yeah, this is another big team coming into their house, the Lions, a team that made the conference championship game last year, so I don't think the Cardinals are necessarily going to be totally unfocused here for that, but the Cardinals are coming off that giant win, man, just a blowout win over one of their big division rivals, whereas the Lions are coming off losing kind of embarrassingly at home to Tampa Bay. And if you look at the stats in that game, the Lions totally outgained Tampa Bay, dude. It was like 400-something yards of offense to Tampa Bay, 200-something yards, and the Lions somehow lost that game and like barely scored in the entire second half. I don't know what that was about. So on the scoreboard in that game was misleading. The Lions very much outplayed Tampa as far as the statistics were concerned. Just major yardage discrepancy there. And the Lions probably are going to be a little bit pissed off of that result. So the market is just heavily indicating on the Cardinals, though. So this is going to make a tough pick in my pools because situationally would have me slightly leaning to the Lions here. But because of the market being so strongly against that, I don't think that I can possibly say that I do that. Like, it might actually have me leaning in the other direction. And then you got Ravens-Cowboys. Speaking about embarrassed, this is a matchup of two embarrassed teams here. Ravens are actually a 1-point favorite now on the road with juice up from a pick'em against Dallas. So the odds makers are telling you something here, man. Dallas doesn't really have a strong home field advantage, right? They don't tend to do that well at home. And it's a very cavernous stadium where the crowd is like kind of too dispersed and too far away from the field to really have like a huge effect, like with how loud they can be and whatever. So the Cowboys, yeah, their home advantage in this new stadium is not that great. Well, I don't know how new it is now. It's been around for a while, but it's not that great. Odds makers are telling you the Ravens are the better team, though, by several points, basically lining them as a favorite on the road. They're basically saying if the Cowboys get like 2.5 for their home field, because I don't think they get that much, really, maybe 2, that the Ravens would then be what? If you do the math there, yeah. So I guess they're saying that the Ravens, I guess, are like a few points better than the Cowboys, which I guess probably I would say that's true power ratings wise. I think the Ravens do still have the way better defense than the Cowboys do. Ravens have 59% of the tickets and 63% of the cash. And it's probably more embarrassing for the Ravens to have lost at home to the Raiders. And the Ravens blew like a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter in that game. Cowboys, yeah, I mean, it's embarrassing to lose by so much against the Saints, but the Saints have looked pretty decent. The Raiders are probably a worse team than the Saints are. So Ravens may be a little bit more embarrassed, and having to go out on the road may help them a little bit more than the Cowboys, like staying at home and just kind of wallowing in that bad loss. That losing atmosphere might still be like a cloud around them, whereas the Ravens getting to just get out of there and go on the road might actually help them a little bit more. Cowboys had 16 straight regular season home wins. Yeah, that may be the case, but I know they don't cover a lot at home. There was like a stretch where they were like just not covering at home whatsoever because they were always too heavy a favorite at home. So I don't know. I still don't think the Cowboys' home advantage is very good, to be honest, man. And yeah, back-to-back blowout losses. You mean including the Green Bay playoff blowout win over the Cowboys there. And then we got Chiefs-Falcons on Sunday night. I'm going to be playing one of the Monday night games, by the way, so I'll talk about the Sunday night game and the other Monday night game. This is a hard read with the Chiefs down from 4.5 to 3, 62% of the tickets on them, 64% of the cash. So the market, like the spread has dropped on the Chiefs, which leads me to believe that some money has come in on the Falcons side. Even though the cash looks like it's a little bit stronger on the Chiefs right now, I think the drop in the market actually matters more because it's gone through the 4.5, through the 4, basically down through the 3.5 to 3. So 4 and 3 are pretty significant numbers, key numbers in football. So I consider that to be a somewhat significant move. So I think it does mean that there is some significant money on the Falcons side. I mean, we'll see. I don't know if there's going to be any like take back. Like if it hits 3, you might see guys come in and start laying the Chiefs. I mean, the Chiefs are coming off a big game against the Cincinnati Bengals. Both teams are coming off big games, man. Chiefs won at home against the Bengals, and it was like a late win for the Chiefs, I think. I think the Bengals had a late lead, and the Chiefs were able to win on a late Butker field goal, if I remember correctly. I can't remember, even though I was watching the end of that game. Something like that. So that was a big win, but the Falcons are also coming off a big win where they went into Philadelphia and Kirk Cousins got his first win as an Atlanta Falcon, and they won as a big underdog. Big win there on Monday night, too. Big win, and that means they have a shorter week returning back home. So Falcons, probably that was the bigger win because it was as a big underdog. So the Falcons probably are at somewhat more of a disadvantage than the Chiefs are. Chiefs coming off a somewhat big win over the Cincinnati Bengals. But Falcons, big upset win on the road, man, on Monday night, plus a short week. Makes it a little bit of a tougher spot for the Atlanta Falcons. What's up, Nancy? All right, and now, we'll talk about, because I'm going to be on the Jags-Bills game, and you can probably figure out which side I'm on in that game already, maybe. I'll talk about Commanders-Bengals, Redskins-Bengals, football team Bengals. Commanders, they got to get rid of that name, man. It's such a horrific name, terrible name. Bengals might be the most public team of the week, man, and they're going to be a very popular survivor pool pick and whatever. And yeah, they are facing a rookie quarterback, so I mean, I don't blame you if you're doing that. They're one of the biggest favorites on the board, maybe the biggest this week, but they are massively public. They're up from 7 to 7.5, 93% of the tickets on them, 92% of the cash. Forever the Redskins. Yeah, Nancy, what raid? There was a raid on me, like in my morning stream. I don't know. Did I miss it? I don't know if I was paying attention. What was the raid? It was an N tower or something else. I don't know. But yeah, Bengals very public with a little bit less of the cash on them. So just because they're so incredibly public, that would have me leaning against them. But as I just mentioned, they're coming off a big game too against the Kansas City Chiefs. So the Bengals, yeah, I mean, they're not in a good spot coming into this game. That was a big, big game, man. A big loss at Kansas City. But the Bengals are still looking for their first win of the season, so I don't know that they're going to be totally unfocused here because when you're an 0-2 team, you really don't want to go 0-3 because the odds are stacked against you. If you're an 0-3 team, they are really stacked against you, like making the playoffs and stuff once you start getting into 0-3, 0-4 territory. So I think that should still have the Bengals a little bit focused. Plus, it is a home Monday night game, even though it is against a bad team. And they are coming off that big game where they kind of suffered a brutal loss there right at the end of Kansas City, played a tough game and just barely lost that game. So, yeah, I mean, I think they're in a little bit of a hangover spot potentially where you're asking them to cover a pretty big number as a team who's been struggling offensively so far this season. It is kind of a tough ask to ask them to do that, even though it is against a Washington defense that is pretty bad. So that could be a cure for Cincinnati's offensive ailments there. I don't know. Cincinnati obviously does not have a big game up next on the road against Carolina. Who cares? So not a sandwich spot or anything like that, but a potential slight hangover spot. In Washington, the fact that they won against the Giants last week, I mean, not an impressive win. The Giants were without a kicker in that game, so the Giants attempted one extra point early in that game on their first touchdown and missed it with some non-kicker trying to kick it. Then they just said, we don't have a kicker, we can't try it. So they scored 2 more touchdowns, went for 2 2-point conversions, failed on both of them, and then they got into field goal range when it was 18-18, and the Giants could have won with a field goal if they had a kicker, but they did not. So they opted to go for it on 4th down, turned it over, and then Washington, who does have a kicker, won. That's just absolutely ridiculous, man. The Giants had 3 touchdowns in the game, and Washington didn't have any. And I think that's the first time ever in the NFL that a team has had a 3-0 touchdown margin and didn't win the game. And that's what the Giants just did last week. I think teams like that had some ridiculous record of like 1,000 something to nothing or something like that. Or maybe it was just a +3 touchdown margin is what the stat was. Whatever it was, completely ridiculous. But Washington, the fact that they got that win, I think helps as far as their rookie quarterback situation is concerned with Jayden Daniels there, because those rookie quarterbacks, I mean, they can definitely struggle early on, but now the fact that he has a win under his belt, that could be like a little bit of a confidence boost, like a little bit of a momentum starter there. So I kind of lean to the Washington side a little bit in that game, but it's not going to be a play for me. We'll get to my plays. I love you too, Nancy. Thank you. We'll get to my actual plays here. Let's start. I'm going to have a play in each slate here. One is going to be in the 1 p.m. slate tomorrow. One is going to be in the 4 p.m. slate, or today, actually, later today. And one is going to be on the other Monday night game. All the plays are on underdogs, and 2 of them are on the ugliest teams in the NFL, basically. First one up is the Denver Broncos, +6.5. Please help me. And the other one that I'm going to talk about after this is even more ugly than this one, if that's even possible. I can't believe I'm doing this, but I am. Buccaneers, they were at 7 at some point. It looked like you probably had to lay a little bit of juice, though, if you wanted to get the +7, if it was out there at all, really. You probably had to lay -115 or something like that on it, which maybe it was worth it to get. The key number is 7. Of course, 7 is key, but I don't see the 7s out there at all anywhere, but I'll take the 6.5. The number's down to 6 with juice, but 6.5s are still out there. Buccaneers are very public, 79% of the tickets on them and 71% of the cash. I think this is going to be this is a sandwich spot for the Buccaneers, man. I think this is going to be a spot where they could overlook the Broncos, with as ugly as the Broncos have played so far this season. Buccaneers coming off a much, much bigger game. I don't think they're going to pay much attention to an AFC team coming into their house for a Sunday afternoon game. I doubt it when this game is surrounded by 2 much bigger games for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Man, one thing that worries me, though, is that, of course, the Broncos are one of those teams that has a rookie QB in there, Bo Nix, and he has not been great so far. But, I mean, this could be a game where maybe he'll be able to do something, because the Buccaneers, which I thought was going to be good for me with the Lions last week. I didn't bet on the Lions, but I had a pick on the Lions, and I had a survivor pool pick on the Lions. I got eliminated on that last week. The Lions outgained the Buccaneers 400-something to 200-something yards, man. And the Buccaneers, they have a big cluster injury problem in the secondary, man. So as bad as the Broncos' offense has been so far, maybe that Buccaneers injury issue in the secondary there could kind of help. Maybe that'll help Bo Nix a little bit there and help the Broncos get something going offensively, hopefully, because it is really ugly to play on a rookie quarterback where you really don't know what you're going to get out of him. And I'm playing on 2 really questionable quarterback situations, but it's not a play on the Broncos. This is a play against the Buccaneers more than anything else, man. I mean, the Broncos have looked just horrendous so far. They made it look a little bit competitive at Seattle. They were losing by 2 touchdowns towards the end of that game, although they were competitive for a half at Seattle. So that tells me at least something, that the Broncos defense is at least playing decently and keeping them in games, because they were in that game for more than a half, basically, at Seattle to start the season, which is not an easy place to play. Then another game where they lost by a touchdown. So they were within a touchdown in both losses to Pittsburgh, in a game where neither team could really put up any offense at all. But maybe it'll help Denver just get out of there, get out of home, and go on the road and start figuring something out. They got 2 straight road games coming up here. That first one, maybe they'll be focused, kind of like the start of a road trip in other sports. It might help them focus a little bit and maybe try something new. The one thing that I've been the one thing that doesn't make any sense to me so far is that the Broncos have had extreme difficulty running the ball so far. Bo Nix has been their leading rusher in both games so far, and they've gotten no production out of their running back. So I think there has to be some sort of change here in their schemes that's going to allow them to run the ball more, because it doesn't make any sense, especially when it's in games that are competitive. You don't have to start throwing the ball, and you don't want to with a rookie quarterback like this. So they got to start running the ball a bit more, man, even though Tampa Bay does have a better run defense than pass defense. So I don't know, but hopefully we get some balance out of the Broncos here. Tampa Bay, though, one other thing is that Bo Nix, like I said, he does run the ball a bit. He's a little bit of a dual threat quarterback, and Tampa Bay did give up a lot of runs on the ground in their first game to Jaden Daniels. So that doesn't exactly look great. So that might help Bo Nix a little bit with Tampa Bay not doing that well against Jaden Daniels, dude. Washington did okay offensively in that game. Jaden Daniels ran for almost 100 yards, I think, in this game against them. He ran for 88 yards against them, and he threw for under 200, which isn't that great, but still, the dual threat aspect of his game kind of threw off Tampa's defense, and Bo Nix might be able to run a little bit. He's not Jaden Daniels, but he might be able to do something against this Tampa defense. And then, of course, as I've been saying, I mean, Tampa, they're coming off a huge win over the Detroit Lions, and that was a revenge win for the Buccaneers. Revenge that actually matters in the NFL is playoff revenge, and that's what this was. Tampa lost at Detroit last year in the playoffs. Of course, Tampa remembers that. They went in and they got revenge on Detroit, went into their house and beat them. That's going to put Tampa in a letdown spot. That's a huge win, and as I already mentioned, Tampa got massively outgained in this game, dude. They got outgained by like 250 yards in this game. That is crazy. Detroit more than doubled their offensive yardage output. Detroit 463 offensive yards against this Tampa defense. So their secondary really didn't really do that well in that game. And Tampa themselves only put up 216 yards of offense. Detroit more like almost doubled their first down output as well. They were -1 in turnovers. They were kind of crucial turnovers as well. But what happened on the scoreboard was not what actually happened in this game. Detroit completely dominated Tampa yardage-wise. So Tampa looks probably a bit better than they actually are right now. And it's a sandwich spot because who do they have up next? The Philadelphia Eagles. Even though Tampa did beat Philadelphia in the playoffs last year, that's a matchup between two good teams in the NFC, man. Philly's still probably one of the best teams in the NFC. That's a big matchup. You could easily look past this ugly 0-2 Denver team that's been putting up nothing offensively, sandwiched in between matchups against two playoff teams from the NFC last year. You're playing this out-of-conference game against an 0-2 team. This is a sandwich spot for Tampa, dude. So I'm going to take a shot with the points on Denver there, man. So probably a bigger game for Denver, trying to finally get that monkey off their back and get a win of some kind. With Tampa, they don't need to do that. I mean, they're coming off a huge win, and they got another really big game up next. So Denver Broncos is going to be the play in that one. What's up, everybody? What's up, JC? Yeah, thanks to me. Hopefully you've been betting some of these, man. I've been hot recently. What do we got going on? I don't know what's going on. I looked a little while ago, and BYU was still winning this game 31-9. It was still looking pretty good, baby. Let's get this done. Let's get a win. You're in 32 leagues, live creation. That's way too many leagues, man. I don't give that much fantasy advice, but I do play fantasy football, and I don't do too badly at it. But I mean, if you want to DM me or whatever, I'll be able to give you some advice in fantasy. Next up, I told you it was going to be uglier than the Denver Broncos. I don't think it gets uglier than this. What team is uglier than the Carolina Panthers? I'm taking the Carolina Panthers +6. Please help me. And in both of these games, man, I'm fading the public. I mean, the public was heavily on the Buccaneers, as I mentioned, with less of the cash than the public. When you see this, like a majority of the tickets on a team and less of the cash, that means some of the bigger bets are on that other side, man. And even with that, still the majority of the cash coming in on the Buccaneers side. But it kind of tells you that it's all pretty much public. And the same thing is going on with the Raiders here. The Raiders are also really public. 83% of the tickets, 74% of the cash. They've gone up from 4.5 to through 5.5, headed towards 6. But that line move, I think, is just because of the public. This is the NFL. The NFL is really the only sport that gets so much heavy public betting, that the public can actually almost like influence the lines, even though it still really only kind of happens in like a Super Bowl type of game or maybe like big conference championship games. But I think the books kind of have to adjust it because they see the public coming in and they know, oh crap, like we're going to be too lopsided on the Raiders side, so we do have to move this line up a little bit. So that doesn't scare me. Like, that doesn't make me think that like there are smart bets coming in on the Raiders. I mean, I highly doubt it. I think the professionals are probably either just going to pass on this game completely or playing the Panthers for the most part here. Playing the Panthers seems unbelievably ugly to do, but this is a game where, I mean, the Raiders, I think they're in a letdown spot, man. They just pulled off a big win for their first win of the season. They played 2 straight road games. So, yes, this is going to be their home opener, but it's a home opener against an NFC team, so an out-of-conference team, and the team that's looked by far the worst team in the NFL so far, the Carolina Panthers, who've just gotten their asses kicked in 2 games so far. I don't think the Raiders are going to pay much attention, especially when they just beat Baltimore on the road. Baltimore's a team that beats you up with their defense, too. It's a physical game. The Raiders had to make a big comeback in that game late in the game. They overcame a 10-point deficit in the fourth quarter. They won as the biggest underdog on the board last week, like a 9.5-point underdog. That's a huge upset win for the Raiders, and they could easily be in a letdown spot here. And up next, I don't know if I would call this a sandwich spot, but it is a bigger game up next against a playoff team from the AFC last year that looks like they may be able to contend this year as well, the Cleveland Browns. So that is a much bigger game than the Carolina Panthers still. So I think the Raiders could be in a spot here where they might not totally focus. And Carolina, they're making some moves, man. I think that tells me that they're trying to win games. So that tells me that Carolina is at least motivated, because what did they do? They just started the season and started doing horrifically again with Bryce Young in there, who had a terrible rookie season last year, the number 1 overall draft pick. Carolina decided to basically cut their losses and cut bait, basically, and they benched Bryce Young, basically, I think until further notice, I would assume, because he's just not getting the job done. Their offense has just been absolutely miserable. So now they're handing the ball over to Andy Dalton. And even though Andy Dalton, not a great quarterback, but he at least has a lot of experience, man. He is older, so you could worry about, his skills diminishing as well because he's an older quarterback, but he can't possibly be as bad as Bryce Young has been. I mean, nobody can. Andy Dalton at least has many years of experience in the NFL. He's been on multiple different teams. He's played in some big games in his career as well, so he has a very good amount of experience, even though he's been a backup a lot too. He's seen a lot of NFL action. So I like that. I think it's a decent move. I think it has to improve Carolina's, not only their offense, like as far as like skill level is concerned, but it's got to improve like their mental state as well. They got to be thinking, all right, we're trying something at least. We're trying to shake things up at the very least. So that makes me think that that's going to spark Carolina a little bit. Like when you have a team, if they have a guy who's really, really performing not well, it's almost similar to like a fired coach scenario. That's one situation that works quite well in like every sport, which we saw with like Brandon Staley last year when he got fired for the Chargers. If you have a coach who's like lost the locker room, the guys in the locker room don't trust this guy, the team's losing, and then they fire the coach, that tends to be a spark in that first game. And I think it might be the same type of situation here where Carolina, maybe the team's not rallying around this quarterback. He is just doing terribly. He's not doing anything for them. He's losing the team. He doesn't have the ability to lead the team, and they cut bait with them, try to spark the team by bringing in a guy who maybe the team trusts a little bit more, which maybe they do with Andy Dalton. I like it. So I think it could be similar to that. This is the fired quarterback scenario, the bench quarterback situation. Let's call it that. I'm going to take the hefty amount of points here with the Carolina Panthers. I don't know that the Raiders really have the offensive capabilities to necessarily be able to cover a large number like this either. I don't know. I mean, Gardner Minshew, he is a pretty underrated quarterback. Like, he put up good numbers when he was on Jacksonville. He's had some pretty decent seasons in the NFL, and he's had prolonged stretches where he's been a starter. So he's not a bad quarterback, but I also don't think he's as good as he's looked these first couple of weeks either, even though I like him. He might be my favorite quarterback in the NFL just because of his attitude and his stash. I like the guy quite a bit. But, I mean, I like Andy Dalton as well, kind of. I kind of like his attitude, too. We got this picture of him right here. It's Andy Dalton time, baby. Let's go with the ginger power in this one. We'll go with Andy Dalton in this one. Carolina Panthers +6. What's up, guys? What's going on in the chat here? I got to keep looking at this chat here. Raiders fans, the Raiders fans are going to be really angry at me. They stab people, in the black hole. They're putting holes in people's bodies in the black hole. I don't know if it's going to help as far as their team is concerned. Although the Raiders team does kind of have that sort of mental state around them, I guess. Like they are known as kind of a mean team just because of the years past where the Raiders were like a ridiculously physical team and basically out there trying to intentionally injure people. That was kind of the Raiders' MO. So they still have that kind of vibe around like the name of the team. I don't know that they're quite that way this year or in recent years, but I mean, they do have Max Crosby, who's a pretty brutal defensive end there, but he's I don't know if he's out there trying to intentionally injure people. I like Max Crosby for the most part. I think he's just a really intense, brutal player, basically. And I will mention one other thing. The Raiders, I forget what the guy's name is. Kuntz, I think. You can correct me if I'm wrong about that. The defensive end who played, I think, all of last season opposite Max Crosby, he's out for the rest. He's out for the entire season, man. I think he injured himself during preseason. He hasn't played, and now they've just ruled him out for the entire season. So that, if anything, I mean, that could hurt the Raiders' defense a little bit there as well. Will there be a live Better Off Dead at Bohemian Grove? I don't know about that, JC. It's up to the Nephilim Death Squad people if they want to subject you guys to that. I mean, there will still be football going on then. So at the very least, I'm going to have to be putting out videos from somewhere, right? I got to continue doing the videos, man. You guys rely on me. All 6 of you, all 7 of you rely on me to win money. And we'll go to my last play before I get out of here. Jacksonville Jaguars. You probably could have already guessed it. 5.5. This is probably my favorite play of the week just because they have the most trustworthy offense and team out of the 3 teams that I'm playing this week. I'm playing all 0-2 teams, baby. I mean, I think the 0-2 teams, if anything, you're getting value at least on a team that's 0-2, a team that's just looked like total trash through the first 2 weeks. This is the NFL, man. And a team is never as bad as they look when they're at their worst, and they're never as good as they look when they're at their best. So, again, it's just basically you don't want to overreact. So I'm going to take the Jaguars in this Monday night game against the Bills. Bills are up from 4 to 5. I see 5.5s out there, but obviously there's pretty much no difference between 5.5. Bills are public, 69% of the tickets, although right now I'm seeing 74% of the cash on them. I don't know if that's going to remain the case by the time we get to Monday night. We might see the cash kind of moving in the other direction a little bit, which I feel like I say that a lot, but when I've said that recently, I've been right on basically all the games that I've said that on. So that at least tells me that my handicapping and situational read has been right on these. Oh, hell yeah. We just got another BYU touchdown. I guess at some point it's 38-9 in the fourth quarter. We're going to get this BYU money line cash easy in this one and roll out of here with a winning Saturday, man. College football looking decent for me so far this year. NFL, by the way, was 3-0 last week and 1-2, I think, in week 1. So I'm 4-2 in the NFL so far. I'll take that because week 1 is really difficult. Week 2 tends to be a lot easier. Week 3 is usually kind of, I don't know, a little bit of a mix between good and bad. So we'll see what happens here. I want to at least go 2-1, though. What am I talking about here? Oh, yeah, Jacksonville Jaguars against the Buffalo Bills. Yeah, the Bills, they're in a sandwich spot too, man. I mean, the Bills, yeah, they have extra time off, but they're coming off that big win over Miami. So when you have a big divisional win like that, I don't think the extra time off helps you, man. It's like what I say about buys. When you have that extended period of time off, if you went into that on a bad note, yeah, you tend to fix some things. You use it to fix some things. But when you go into it on a really high note, like crushing Miami on the road 31-10, you don't really have anything to change. You don't have anything to fix. Everything's working. So you tend to just be kind of reading press clippings or listening to the media, reading press clippings. I'm talking I'm so old school that I'm from the days of physical newspapers, which Actually, I am. Bring back physical newspapers, man. I like the crisp feel of it. I like the smell of the freshly printed newspaper and doing the crosswords in the newspapers. I'm that old. But, the team tends to be like listening to the media and reading what the media has to say and talking about how good they are. So the team tends to just get a little bit more overconfident in that extra time off. And that could happen here with Buffalo, even though I worry slightly just because Jacksonville did beat Buffalo last year. That was in a weird situational spot where I won money on that game. Actually, it was one of my bets last year. I think I gave it out on Better Off Dead. Jacksonville, it was a weird situation where Jacksonville was playing 2 straight weeks in London because they had just played Atlanta in London the week before that. So Jacksonville was already in London, had already adjusted to the time zone. They're very familiar with that stadium in London anyway, so it was a massive advantage for Jacksonville in that game. And I think Buffalo actually came into that game off of a win over Miami, if I'm not mistaken. Something like that. They were coming in off a big win, so I played Jacksonville. I think it was around the same number, too. It was plus 5.5 or 6 or something like that. I took it. Jacksonville won, but does that mean this is going to be a revenge spot for Buffalo? I don't really think so. I think revenge, for the most part, is overrated, overstated. Is like in the NFL. I mean, these guys are professionals, so they don't tend to let that really affect them that much unless it's playoff revenge. If it's the team that completely eliminated you last year, then yeah, I think then revenge actually matters, and you do tend to have that game circled. But if it was a game like in the middle of the season or early in the season that wound up not meaning anything, because Buffalo wound up making the playoffs and Jacksonville did not. So I don't think Buffalo is going to really remember that or care about that. That was a weird spot in London. I don't think they care about that much at all. I do think Buffalo cares more about this win over Miami, and now they have the extra time off. They go into this Jacksonville game, who's an 0-2 team, even though they have been a playoff team in recent years, but not last year. And they're off to a not very good start this year. But Buffalo has Baltimore up next week, too, and then Houston, too. So they have 2 straight really good AFC teams, 2 straight playoff teams from last year. So this makes this a sandwich spot, man. This Jacksonville spot is the down spot in Buffalo's schedule over the next 4 weeks. They have 3 really big games all on the road against playoff teams from last year, and this Jacksonville game is just kind of sandwiched in there in the middle, even though it is a home primetime Monday night game. I mean, Buffalo gets a lot of home primetime games. They play a lot in primetime. So one more, if you get a team that never plays in primetime and they get that primetime game at home, yeah, it matters a little bit more to them. But with Buffalo, where they've been one of the best teams in the AFC for a while, and they get a lot of primetime billing, I don't think they're going to think this game matters as much. I don't think they're going to care as much about this. Whereas Jacksonville, I think, is going to care a little bit more about it because they're 0-2. So they're probably going to be trying to win, man. Jacksonville, and they're coming off a really ugly, embarrassing loss. They're coming off some ugly offensive performances. I played against Jacksonville last week because I thought it was a sandwich spot. They were coming off a close, blown game against Miami, and Jacksonville was winning that game, I think 17-3 or something like that in that game, and they blew it. That was a big game against the playoff team from last year against Miami, and Jacksonville had them on the ropes and blew it. So I thought they were in a bad spot coming out of that, even though Cleveland had looked horrific with Deshaun Watson, and Watson still wasn't good in this game. But I said it was going to be a low-scoring, ugly defensive game, and I was right, and Cleveland still got the outright win in that one. So now Jacksonville's coming off that. I think Jacksonville did not take Cleveland that seriously, coming off that really tough Miami loss, and with this big Buffalo game, Monday night game, primetime game up on deck. I think they were looking ahead, too. As I mentioned last week, that was a sandwich spot, so I don't think you can take that much away from Jacksonville not performing very well in that game. It was a bad situational spot for them. I think you're going to see them show a lot more focus in this game against Buffalo. This is a much bigger game than the Cleveland game was for Jacksonville. Jacksonville, they're going to bounce back. And that was such an ugly offensive performance. You don't want to lose like that to the Cleveland Browns on your home turf as well. Putting up only 13 points, no. You're going to bounce back from that. And this Jacksonville team, I think you're getting a little bit of extra value on them in the market too, because, of course, Buffalo Bills, everybody knows how good they are, and the Bills have looked really good so far. Bills are 2-0, and the Bills have put up whatever, like 69. I think they put up, no, it's not 69, excuse me, it's 65. Sorry, not as nice. 65 points over the first 2 games, whereas Jacksonville has only put up 30 over the first 2 games. So who in their right mind is going to want to play on Jacksonville here, right? Buffalo has more than doubled the scoring output that Jacksonville has so far this season. So nobody's going to want anything to do with Jacksonville here. But Jacksonville, they're not a bad team, man. I mean, Trevor Lawrence, he might be still working his way back from being injured last year. And when he played last year for that last portion of the season, he was still injured. He may still be working his way back. And this Jacksonville offense has a lot of decent weapons on it. I don't expect them to continue playing this horrendously offensively. I mean, this team is not this bad offensively. And their defense isn't really that bad either. And their defense has played pretty well so far in the first 2 games. So if this turns into a battle that's more of a defensive battle here, I like taking the underdog in that case too, man. Because you can have 2 teams that can play decent defense. And Jacksonville debatably might even be the better defense. You can see this total's down to 45. So it's not a really high total either, and it's gone down from 47. So maybe there's been some money coming in on the under too, expecting a little bit of a lower scoring game. As I mentioned with all the college games today, that means taking the underdog is worth a little bit more. Those points are worth a little bit more. I like taking the underdogs in games that have lower totals like that. You get the defense showing up. It tends to matter a little bit more. It tends to be a little bit more of an advantage to take those points with the underdog there. And I think if Jacksonville had not been playing as badly as they have been, and if Buffalo had not put up those high point totals and looked as good as they have, I think this line probably would not be quite as high. I don't remember what the look ahead was, but I think if anything, the books have had to skew the line a little bit high on the Bills. And I think that's been the case with all the games that I've talked about that I'm playing on, man. And the Broncos game, that total's at 41, even though it's gone up a little bit. That's a really low total there. And it looks like the cash discrepancy is at least actually on the under, even though it's gone up a little bit. So that game, you're taking points in a game of the low total. Panthers-Raiders is at 40, so that's a pretty low total. So you're taking points in a game of the low total in that one too. So the highest total by far is actually this one out of those 3 games. And it's still not really that high. So I like all those underdogs, man. And as I mentioned, I'll just reiterate one more time, this Buffalo team, that game that they had against Miami, that final score was misleading, dude. They capitalized on Buffalo turnovers. It was a 3-0 turnover margin, and Miami outgained Buffalo, dude. So with both Tampa and Buffalo this week, they're coming off wins that were big wins, and the score was misleading because both of those teams, Buffalo and Tampa, actually got outgained in that previous game by their opponents. And in Buffalo's case, really, they capitalized on these turnovers, +3 in the turnover margin. So Buffalo did not play anywhere close to as well as it looks like they did on the scoreboard. They actually got outplayed somewhat significantly, actually, and Tampa also did. So I think that's it, man. That's going to do it for me. This has been a long video yet again. We're going over an hour here. We went an hour and a half on the college video. So I told you this one was going to be a little bit shorter than the college one, at least, because there's way more to talk about in the college. What's up, guys? What's up, Jay Dorr? What's going on, man? Thanks for hanging out, guys. Doc Shelley, you continue to be extremely homosexual. Show your milkers. I've done it before. I've done it on Tower Gang. Go watch all the Tower Gang. It's a good segue into talking about Tower Gang, as my camera is also telling me to get out of here, as it's failing to focus correctly. I think it was because of the lighting change after I took down the ESPN, which was much brighter. Now I'm looking at this dark StreamYard screen and looking at myself. I'm looking at Dark Toad. Now we've seen that the camera just shifts focus, goes out of focus. Thanks, JC. Yeah, thanks, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. Follow the Tower Gang podcast, man. I'm Tower Gang Toad on Twitter. Go follow the Tower Gang podcast, the most hilarious, offensive podcast that has ever existed, that humans have ever conceived of. Every Wednesday night, 9:11 p.m. Go laugh with us. Go hang out in the chat. Sign up for the Patreon, patreon.com/TowerGang. You can throw us some support there, and you get bonus content, pre-shows, post-shows. You get everything, man. You get a Telegram where you can chat with us. I forgot to put today's college video link. I forgot to talk about college in the Telegram, man, in my betting channel. I'll throw this NFL one up there. I got to do it. Thanks, Nate. Good luck to you as well. Good luck to everybody on their bets if they're betting. If you're following me, if you think that I suck and you're fading me, go ahead. I'm surprised, actually. I haven't seen anybody say that I suck in in the chat here tonight, because usually, like, these professional bettors, man, it's because my channel's not big enough and you guys all like me. You see these professional bettors when they put out ugly ass plays like the Carolina Panthers or whatever. You'll see people in the comments just completely giving them shit. And then as a bettor, when people do that, it's fun when you get the bet right, just to be like, I told you so. It makes it feel a little bit better. But of course, when you're betting, high volume, when you're betting in general, you're just betting all these games, like, to win, to profit, you still only need to hit like 54%, maybe 53% or whatever. So you're still going to have a lot of losses in there. Thanks for hanging out, guys. Yeah, Tower Gang, we are definitely degenerates. This is another degenerate show, but it's degenerate gambling, man. That's right. Peace out, everybody. I know when to hold them and when to fold them. We're talking about titties? What are we talking about? I know when to hold them because that's when they're, plump and still perky, and when to fold them, like fold them over because they're too saggy. When they're too saggy like that, I'm definitely going to fold, baby. Thanks, JC. Yeah, it's my safe space. Peace out, everybody. Have a good night. It's late again. Oh, man, I'm running late on these shows. These are going real late into the night, baby. Let's have a good Sunday. We had a good Saturday. Assuming BYU finishes this off, which they will, they'll finish. Peace out, everybody. Thanks for hanging out.